everybody. Is everyone excited to spend some extra quality time in their yards? I guess with the current situation, why not? I know I am. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to the presentations that the Hort Society has put out for you, and great for you guys at the Hort Society for putting on this initiative for all of your members and other gardeners throughout the city. My name is Mathieu-Daoust. I am the local manager for Bartlett Tree Experts Calgary, also former owner of Tree Frog Tree Care. What I hope to do for you guys today is just to give you some information, some tips and tricks on what you can do to keep your trees and shrubs in your yard healthy throughout the season and from season to season. If you do have any questions at all, please feel free to give our local office a call, ask to be in touch with me, and I'd be more than happy to provide you with an on-site consultation, of course face-to-face at a safe distance, or send me some pictures, give me a phone call. I love to talk and I love what I do, so our source of information is definitely not limited to specifically to this webinar here. I guess the first thing we'll touch on is safety. Why not? One big motto that we have with Bartlett is safety above all else. So make sure that when you are doing anything on your trees and shrubs, I would say at a very bare minimum, eye protection. They don't grow back. I really like working with long sleeves. Yeah, it's been a while, but usually my hands get completely scratched up just from working with trees and whatnot. So definitely long sleeve, covered pants, and if you have any, I would recommend some hard toe boots. These are carbon fiber but still fit safety standards, or anything, no sandals. At least keep your toes covered. And then if you're cutting larger branches, wear a hard hat. I'll even wear a hard hat if all I'm doing is trimming shrubs or doing some work from the ground. How do trees recover from their wounds? So I know people may have discussed in the past trees healing from their wounds, but trees don't have the ability to heal necessarily like animals do. They're not going to grow skin back where skin was cut. How trees respond to stress, and especially to wounds, is they grow over that wound and seal it or cover it up. And it's a 4-step process. There's 4 walls and reaction zones that the tree creates when it receives an injury. We've got some nice little props here. We have wall 1, which stops the decay from spreading inward on the tree. Wall 2 prevents decay from spreading up and down the tree. And wall 2 is important in the fact that it's the weakest out of the 4 walls. Wall 3 prevents radial decay. So if you look at the edge of this piece of wood here, these cracks are actually along the ray cells. So pretend that this is a round piece. Wall 3 prevents radial spread of decay in a tree. And then wall 4 is our strongest wall. And so let's say the tree was rotten from here to here. Wall 4 would start at the point of injury and is the new tissue that's formed after the injury has been created. And that's the strongest wall out of the 4 walls. And professionally we call it compartmentalization of decay in trees, or in short, coated. So trees don't necessarily heal, they compartmentalize their wounds. Now I'd like to go over a couple of different styles of pruning cuts that you can make on a tree. And it's simple, but it's not simple. We have a branch reduction cut and a branch removal cut. And the way that the tree responds to each of those cuts is really important. Has anyone here ever read in a book or heard always cut a branch at a branch collar? Well, you're absolutely right if you answered yes, and that applies only to removal cuts. A reduction cut does not cut to a collar, and I'll show you a quick example. So if I'm making a cut on this branch here, you can see that there's a bit of a swelling here. That's called the branch collar. or also known as a branch protection zone. So if we make a cut just at the collar, that is a branch removal cut. We've removed the branch, and I can show you on the slab after I go through the reduction cut how the tree responds to each of those kinds of wounds. And if you're not sure exactly what angle to cut it at, my preference, or the easiest way to teach it, is always make sure that the end result of your cut has the least amount of surface area possible. So cutting, I'll exaggerate on this branch here, cutting at this angle or cutting at this angle, you have a much smaller surface area cutting it more flat, and a larger surface area cutting it at a sharper angle. And also it kind of looks like a dog's ear. So I know that's when I'm teaching and reviewing work from my arborist, is I say watch the dog's ear, no dog's ear cuts. So we'll finish off the cut, and this would be right here. So I'll make a pour cut. So we'll make a stub cut. I prefer seeing a stub cut rather than a flush cut, because the tree will be able to heal over a stub a little bit easier than a flush cut. You cause a lot more problems for the tree. So there's a stub cut. Here's a proper cut. And then here's a flush cut. So now we've really compromised the tree by making a flush cut. And again on a branch removal cut. And now for the branch reduction cut, we're going to cut it here. So as you can see, if I cut right here, there's no collar here. So we're not cutting this back to a collar, so that would be called a branch reduction cut. Now we'll go a little bit deeper into the difference between a reduction and a removal cut. Here's a nice cross section of a branch attachment, and you can see the swelling in the bark. This is an old wound, so the tree's actually almost completely sealed it over. You can see the new wood tissues here that were formed after that branch had broke or died, and you can see how the branch attachment kind of finishes right about here. So we've got wall 1 would stop the decay from moving into the branch, wall 2 would stop the decay from moving further down the stem, wall 3 would stop radial decay in that branch, and then wall 4 is basically all of this new tissue that's put around the branch after the injury has been created. And I really like to emphasize that whenever you're removing live tissue on a branch or a tree, that it has to be done with precision and purpose, because every cut to live tissue on a tree I would consider as an injury to that tree. And then, so yeah, I think this was actually just a dead branch that had broken at some point, but you can see that the tree has actually managed to localize any potential for decay in the branch only. It hasn't really moved up and down the stem here. If a flush cut would have been made, we would have compromised the branch protection zone or the branch collar, and then exposed basically all of the wood fibers up and down the main trunk of the tree to potential for decay, because we've compromised the branch protection zone or the tree's ability to localize decay within the branch itself. Now, this is a pretty heavy cut. I would never do this or recommend doing this to a tree, but if we were to make a reduction cut at the top here, now because there is no branch collar in this area, you are basically creating a wall 4 from here to here and sealing off any stored energy in this part of the tree right up until wall 2 actually takes place. And this is a piece of willow. Wall 2 is weak in most species, but especially in species like poplar and willow is extremely weak. So reduction cuts can be used quite effectively if you're trying to slow the growth on a branch, because it's kind of good if you can create that wall 4, seal off any stored energy on that tree, as well as reduce the amount of energy making potential or photosynthetic potential of that branch in order to establish better structure in that part of the tree. Great, so hopefully I haven't confused anyone too much. It takes a while to learn the difference in the science between removal cuts and reduction cuts, and it's even harder to try and teach it, especially in a short amount of time. One recommendation I have, and definitely take a moment to write this down, is Edward Gilman's Illustrated Guide to Pruning. I would say it's the only book I would ever recommend on pruning, whether it's young tree pruning, mature tree pruning. It's the best book money can buy if you want a good resource and reading material when it comes to pruning. All right, so now I'd like to cover another topic, which would be tree planting, and kind of going to hit two birds with one stone here. I'll show you a 3-step pruning cut on a larger branch. Because that's really important to prevent damage to a tree as well. But putting the right tree in the right place, I cannot stress that enough. Put the right tree in the right place. Take your time, do your research. A tree is a multi-generational living organism. You want it to outlast you, to outlast your children, to outlast your grandchildren. So take the time and effort to pick the right species, pick the right spot, and to install the tree properly. There's definitely some pros and cons to getting either a container tree, bare root, or caliper trees, and I would say all three are great options for planting depending on the scenario and your needs and wants for the tree as well. One thing that I see very frequently is buried root collars, but basically you want to find that root flare where the roots start coming out of the trunk and the trunk kind of looks like an elephant's foot coming out of the ground. You want that at ground level. You don't want to bury the tree 6, 8, 12 inches too deep, because then you're going to cause adverse conditions that are detrimental to the root development of your tree. And the first 3 to 5 years of your new tree's life in its new space are the most critical, because the tree has to reestablish a balance between what's above ground and what's below ground. And if there are any defects caused by improper planting, then you've basically just wasted a whole bunch of time and money. And now we'll go through the right tree, right place. So this tree was not intentionally planted. It's a green ash seedling, probably came from the tree across the street there. Seed in the wind, landed on the fence, and it's growing right under some high voltage power lines. Do not ever plant any species of tree, regardless of what the tag says at the garden center, under a power line. So we'll go over the, so let's just pretend this is a branch on a tree. It's a low branch, and it's going to cause problems for clearance, either for maintaining the property, driveway, or whatnot. So let's just, for video's sake, pretend that the branch is actually at this angle, not at this angle, and I'll show you a 3-step cut. First, I'm just going to cut straight through the branch and show you why you need to make a 3-step cut when you're cutting something larger. So just watch yourself with the camera there. I'm holding on to it, so it's not going to come down slowly. So if the branch is horizontal, its weight would probably start pulling it down, and see how the wood fibers are starting to tear here. There's why we make a 3-step cut, to prevent this sort of damage to a tree. Now this is maybe a little bit exaggerated, possibly because the sap is now starting. It'll start soon. It's not quite starting yet, but so we'll make a 3-step cut. And let's see, a proper pruning cut here, this would be about 1/3 of the size of this, so a proper reduction cut. So first I'm going to make a cut on the underside of the branch. Remember, the branch, for visualization's sake, the branch is actually laying down like that. So on the underside of the branch, make a cut. And then at about 1/3 of the diameter of the stem, further up the branch, make a cut above. So there's step 1. Step 2, a little further up the branch. And then it snaps off like that. And then step 3 is to get rid of that stub. And there we go. And then let's cover the removal cut again. So reduction cut, not cutting to a collar. We'll do a removal cut on this branch here. We're going to remove that branch. And okay, so I'll go the wrong way to cut it, leaving a big stub and cutting between nodes, or proper cut, low surface area on the end result of the cut, mindful to preserve that branch protection zone or branch collar, and finally a flush cut. Now you can see I've got a bit of a stub here. It's about a millimeter, maybe a millimeter and a half worth of a stub. I would rather leave this alone than try to fix it, because you could actually cause more damage and potentially cut into the branch collar trying to fix that stub. And then here's a flush cut. Big bad bad. So right there I've cut into the collar and basically started a wound that could cause decay in the main stem of the tree. It won't be as localized in the branch there. So quickly, removal cut, reduction cut. And we'll just finish this off. Try to cut it as low as possible. Alright, now we should brush up on structure and branch attachments. So here we have a smaller branch coming out of a main stem. This is a strong branch attachment. I can show on the slab how there's the overlapping of wood fibers, but I have to pull really, really hard, and I can barely get this little branch off. And now we have two branches of the same size originating from the same point, and you'll see how easily they come apart, and how the wood fibers also, there's no overlapping of wood fibers between these two branches. So this is what I would call a codominant branch attachment, or also a weak branch attachment, and you can see how that split like that very, very easily. Or on this one, it's a little bit codominant, not as bad as the other one, but still, yeah, this branch attachment was definitely a bit better. And again, we've got a size difference between this part and that part. So let's put the tree back together. So let's say this is a new tree that you just bought. At some point, what you're going to want to do is select which branch is going to be the lowest permanent branch on a tree. Every branch on the tree is in a permanent location indefinitely until it's removed or broken, of course. But this branch here, as the tree gets taller, it gets taller from the growth tips. As the tree continues to grow, these branches aren't going to go up like this. They'll just get bigger and longer. Now, to establish proper structure in this tree, what we want to do is establish a single dominant leader, slow the growth of these branches down. Eventually, because they're lower than 6 feet, I would recommend at some point eventually removing these branches, but they're helping the tree right now, so we don't want to remove them quite yet. But what we do want to do is reduce their energy making potential or photosynthetic potential, make a couple of reduction cuts. Cut there, cut here. So now we've got a single dominant leader established. Probably in about 3 to 5 years, or the next time that the tree is up for its pruning cycle, once this portion of the tree has grown more, then we can look at reducing these branches more, or if it's time, removing them altogether. And then the lower branches further down on the tree, doing a bit of reduction on those, preserve the branches, but slow the growth down. And part of the reason why we want to retain these temporary branches is, one, to preserve the root to shoot ratio, or live crown ratio on the tree. And also, these lower branches help the tree develop taper. If this branch was gone, the tree's wood fibers wouldn't have to go around that branch collar and then down here. So the tree will develop taper slower if all the lower branches are removed on it. And of course, it'll have a lower live crown ratio, which will also decrease its vigor as well. Okay, well, since we've just brushed on the topic of root to shoot ratio, who would agree that the roots are probably one of the most important parts on a plant, secondary to leaves? I guess it would be pretty equal. The roots won't survive without the energy produced by the leaves can't survive without the water and nutrients provided by the root system. So addressing your soil conditions, I would say, would be, in some cases, more important than pruning or any type of cutting you could do to the tree. One thing I know for sure is that here in Calgary, our pH in our soil is really high, and if you're using tap water to water your trees, the pH on our tap water is really high as well. So one thing I notice a lot is nutrient deficiencies, not necessarily directly related to a lack of nutrients in the soil, but because of imbalances in the soil's pH, which makes certain nutrients such as iron less available to the plant. And there's lots of really neat colorful charts that you can Google. It's called the Plant Nutrient Availability Chart, and it'll show you a range of pH and then all the different nutrients, your 3 macronutrients, and then all of the micronutrients, and how each one is either more available or less available depending on the pH of the soil. Another thing that's really important for trees, if at all possible, is to put mulch around the stem of the tree. I would say, if you can afford the look of it, I guess, to go out to the drip line. But mulching, I can't say enough good things about it. It helps add organic matter to the soil. It also helps keep moisture in the soil, helps regulate the soil's temperature, reduces competition with lawn, and also helps prevent damage, say from things like using a weed whacker around the base of a tree. It can cause a lot of serious damage to the tree. If there's a nice ring of mulch around the tree, then managing the weeds in that area is also a lot easier and can prevent damage to the tree. And then another thing that I could stress is soil testing. I've never seen so many soil samples until the past 2 years, where I've probably run across 250 that I've taken here in the city, sent to the lab, and then go over each and every one of them. But testing your soil for soil conditions, I would say, is really important as well, especially if you're planning on fertilizing. You're better off targeting your plant's needs like a sniper rather than like a machine gun, just kind of random scattering of shots. You want to target your fertilizer applications based on the species that you have, but also the current conditions that your soil may have. Great. Another topic that I cover a lot in my day-to-day work would be insect and disease management. And the one thing that needs to be stressed and emphasized when it comes to managing insects and diseases on any plant in your yard or even your house plants is monitoring. Monitoring is, I would say personally, is the most important aspect of a proper working integrated pest management program. You need to know what species you have, what they're susceptible to, and then know when to look for certain organisms. So if we look at the background here, we've got a Mayday tree, and we know that Maydays are prone to getting a fungal disease called black knot. My favorite time to look for black knot is in the middle of winter, because it sticks out like a sore thumb. It's super easy to spot. Whereas, let's say if you're looking for something like needle cast and your tree just turned brown over a winter, you're looking at the wrong place. If you're looking for needle cast on a spruce, the symptoms actually show up on the previous year's growth, not or 2 seasons growth back. But definitely knowing the life cycle of the pest, the life cycle of the tree, shrub, or plant, and then knowing what they're locally susceptible to getting, I would say are my main focus when it comes to dealing with pests, rather than, oh, something's wrong with my tree, I'm just going to spray an insecticide on my tree, when I actually have a fungal problem. All right, and one last comment would be tools. I'm a big fan of purchasing quality tools, and I would say as a homeowner or do-it-yourselfer, these should last a lifetime. These are easily sharpenable Felco pruners. They make Felco pruners in all different shapes and sizes. I'm left-handed. These are specifically made for left-handed people. They work great. And again, unless I lose them, I could probably have these, for another 10 to 15 years. Then, yeah, you can see when I bought them, the blade was probably about that big, and now it's that small, just because of how often I sharpen them. And it's really important to keep your tools properly sharpened. And then I strongly recommend getting one of these bad boys. It's called a Silky Zubat, or any pruning saw from the Silky brand. But I would say get the Zubat blade. It'll last a lifetime. Once it gets dull, you can replace the blade, keep the handle. But I would say, unless you have an acreage and you're cutting every single day, you probably never have to replace the blade. How do you sharpen these? You can get special sharpening stones from the manufacturer that will give you a nice edge. I find just quick in the field, because I sharpen these, I would say about once every month, depending on how much I'm using them and what species of tree I'm cutting. I just use a chainsaw file and run it along the edge until it feels sharp, and I just about cut myself, so they're still sharp. But I just use a round file and just zip, 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 zip. I do that with my pole pruning tools as well. And the hand saws, because each tooth has 3 angles, 1, 2, 3 angles, for the amount of time it would take to sharpen this, once it gets dull, it's easier just to replace the blade. And I would say, this one's still feeling pretty sharp. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I really enjoyed providing you with the information, and I would say that is a very small fraction of what I have to offer. If you want to get a hold of me, you can visit our website, www.bartlett.com, or call our local office at 403-474-3764. That's 474-FROG, to book an appointment, or email us any pictures or questions you may have at calgaryoffice@bartlett.com. And I hope that everybody does the best that they can. Take some time, spend it in your garden, be with your plants. It's great for your mental health. It'll help put you at peace and really help you focus on something more positive. Thanks again.